rejected by every world. She found peace only in the arms of a human. The sky over Relian 9 looked like an old bruise, gray, lifeless, and spreading across the atmosphere like a warning. From orbit, it resembled a cratered wasteland. Up close, it was worse. The surface crackled underfoot with rusted alloys and synthetic bone. Trash from every corner of the galaxy rotted here. Broken war machines, faulty prototypes, failed genetic experiments, and the living mistakes no world wanted to claim. Caliph was one of those mistakes. She lay still beneath the collapsed wing of an old refugee ship, her white skin almost blending into the metallic ruin. Her body was bruised, but not bleeding. Her species bled differently. Light, not liquid. It flickered under her pale skin like dying starlight. She hadn't moved in 6 days. Her hair, long, white, and full of static, tangled itself in the cracked edges of a cargo net. Her eyes remained shut, but her mind wandered in broken loops, replaying memories that were never really hers. Visions, glitches, predictions. That was what she was made for. A synthetic oracle, built by a species who believed prophecy could be engineered. It couldn't. Not perfectly. Not in her. She was too emotional, too fragmented, too unstable. So they discarded her, not even with cruelty. Just efficiency. The same way you trash a cracked monitor. That's how she ended up here, on a planet no one ever came to unless they wanted something they shouldn't. And someone had just landed. The sound wasn't a crash, more like a deep metallic groan followed by hydraulic hissing. Then boots. Heavy ones. Someone muttered under their breath. English. Goddamn. Place smells like burnt piss. Calith's fingers twitched. She didn't open her eyes yet. It was probably another scavenger. Some came to rip wiring from dead androids, or look for forgotten tech. A few came to test weapons on things that couldn't fight back. She'd learned not to hope. But this voice, it was different. Less robotic. Less cruel. And tired. So tired. Okay. Signal came from Quadrant 6. Let's see what the hell pinged me. The man moved closer. A backpack clinked with tools. He stepped onto the crumpled wing, where Caliph lay beneath the metal. His weight shifted the wreck just enough to let a shard of light fall across her face. He stopped. Whoa shit. Wait. Are you? She opened her eyes. Silver pupils. Dim but glowing. It startled him. She didn't speak. Just stared up. Are you alive? He asked. Almost stupidly. She blinked once. The man crouched. He had tan skin, dark eyes, and a crooked scar over his right eyebrow. His beard was patchy, like he'd shaved in orbit and given up halfway. He looked like a soldier trying to pretend he wasn't one anymore. My name's Ethan, he said. Ethan Reyes. I'm human. Earth. You understand me. Her lips were cracked. She tried to speak but choked on dust. He pulled out a silver flask and carefully lifted her head. Easy. Here. The water hit her tongue like fire. She coughed hard, but drank more. Then whispered, Human. That's right, he said, nodding slowly. And you are. She hesitated. No name felt true anymore. But after a pause, she answered, voice barely audible, Caliph. Caliph, he said it like it meant something. Like it mattered. She looked up at the sky. You shouldn't be here. Ethan chuckled dryly. Yeah, well, story of my life. I chase a go signal, and find it. He looked around. The place was a death trap. Unstable terrain, toxic gas pockets, and worse things that crawled out at night. This girl, woman, had survived it alone. He didn't know how. He hesitated. You got anyone else out here? She shook her head. Her voice cracked again. No one comes back. No one looks twice. Damn, Ethan muttered. That's fucked. He stood and glanced at the ridge behind them. His ship wasn't far. A retrofitted survey cruiser named Wendigo. Not made for passengers, but she'd fly. I don't know what you are, Caliph, he said, but you don't deserve to die in this place. Her eyes flickered. What? He froze. What do you mean, why? Everyone else left. He knelt again. Yeah, I'm not them. She studied him like he was a trick of the light, like he'd vanish if she blinked too hard. He offered his hand. Come on, I've got food. You'll be safe. Just trust me. Her body screamed against it. Trust was a knife she'd held too many times by the blade. But something in his voice wasn't fake. Not polished or rehearsed like her old handlers. Just human. She placed her hand in his. It felt warm. Real. Ethan lifted her carefully. She was too light, malnourished. Every bone in her felt fragile, like she was made of glass and gravity was getting mean. He wrapped his coat around her and started toward the ridge. Each step felt like pulling her from a grave. Behind them, the graveyard watched. But this time it didn't win. Caliph rested her head on his shoulder. Not because she trusted him, not yet, but because for the first time in cycles, she wasn't cold. And that terrified her more than the wasteland ever could. The Wendigo wasn't built for passengers, especially not ones who glowed faintly under stress. Ethan laid Caliph gently on the narrow medical cot at the rear of the ship. It hissed as it adjusted to her weight, registering vitals it didn't recognize. Alien. Female. Malnourished. The interface flickered between confusion and compliance, finally displaying a red blinking triangle that meant, "This thing isn't supposed to be alive, but it is." He tossed a thermal blanket over her and ran a quick scan. No broken bones. No critical systems failing. But her neural patterns were a mess, like a computer overheating while trying to dream. Kayla stared at the ceiling. Her hands trembled slightly as she traced invisible patterns into the air. He didn't ask what they meant. Instead, he moved to the console and set coordinates back toward Earth orbit. The ship rattled as the engines engaged. Caliph flinched at the vibration. "You're safe," Ethan said over his shoulder. "Just some thruster lag. She's old, but she flies." Caliph didn't respond. Her eyes stayed on the wall like she was trying to see through it, like her mind wasn't here. Ethan sat across from her. "Look, I'm not going to pretend this isn't weird as hell. You're the first living being I've seen dumped on that planet. Hell, you're the first anything to talk back to me in years. So, if you're waiting for me to ask questions, yeah, I've got a million. But I'll wait." She turned slowly, her voice dry and flat. "Why are you helping me?" He raised an eyebrow. "Because I'm not a bastard. That's not a reason." "Sure it is," he said. "It's rare enough to count as one." She didn't argue. Instead, she touched the edge of the blanket like it was foreign technology. It was soft, something she hadn't felt in cycles. Ethan stood up and walked to the kitchenette. It was barely functional, but he managed to heat a packet of synthesized stew. He returned with a steaming bowl and offered it. Caliph sniffed it. "What is this?" "Technically," he said, sitting again, "chicken and rice. Realistically, a war crime in a bowl. But it'll keep you alive." She took it, her fingers brushing his. Ethan didn't flinch. She noticed that. Caliph ate slowly, as if relearning how to chew. Her movements were precise, almost mechanical. But when she finished, she looked at him again, not just at his face, but into him, like she could see past bone. "You don't fear me," she said. Ethan leaned back. "Not yet. You should." He chuckled. "People keep saying that to me." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what I am. I don't think you know what you are." That caught her off guard. She looked away. He waited, then softened his voice. "You don't have to tell me anything. But if someone comes looking for you, I need to know if I'm sitting in a powder keg." Caliph closed her eyes. "No one's coming. They already had their chance." Something shifted in the air, a pressure, like grief trying to become sound. But she swallowed it. "I was built," she said, "not born. Designed by a collective called HFY, a synthetic prophet meant to serve their expansion program. My visions didn't match their criteria. Too vague, too emotional. They said I couldn't be calibrated." Ethan frowned. "So they threw you out." 6 times, she corrected. "Different worlds. Different tests. Won't even try to dissect me. Each time, they put me back in stasis and dumped me somewhere worse." He shook his head. "Jesus." Caliph looked at her hands. "I stopped trying to be useful. That's when they sent me to Rillian 9. That's where they send the ones beyond repair." Silence thickened between them. Ethan finally spoke. "You're not broken." She scoffed, a sound more bitter than amused. "You don't even know what I was supposed to be. Don't need to. You're here. You're alive. That counts." Caliph stared at him, genuinely puzzled. Why do humans say things like that? It counts. Counts for what? He rubbed his eyes. For matching. For not giving up on somebody just because they don't fit in your box. She tilted her head. "You speak as if you were also discarded." He didn't answer right away. Then, Army didn't want me after the accident. Said I wasn't stable. They were right, mostly. So I left. Started hauling scrap. Been in deep space ever since. Caliph watched him closely. "That's why you came to Rillian 9. You weren't chasing a signal. You were chasing something broken. He didn't deny it. Just stood and walked to the viewport. Stars stretched beyond the ship like cold embers. I wasn't expecting you, he admitted. I wasn't expecting anyone. A moment passed. The kind where nothing explodes, no alarms go off, and yet everything shifts. Caliph sat up straighter. Your world. Earth. It's where we're going. Yeah, he said. Don't worry. I've got contacts. Quiet ones. We'll get you somewhere safe. Safe, she repeated. That's a word people like to say, but rarely mean. Ethan turned to her. I mean it. Caliph searched his face again. Not for lies, but for limits. How far would this human go? Would he keep her? Would he discard her too? He didn't look away. And for the first time in her fractured existence, Caliph felt the beginnings of something terrifying and fragile. Hope. The Wendigo emerged from warp at the edge of Earth's solar system, systems humming with strained power. Ethan tapped the console, checking fuel reserves. Not great, just enough to make orbit and land discreetly in the Nevada desert, where an old bunker waited under his false ID. Caliph stood behind him, draped in one of his extra jackets. It hung awkwardly on her frame, oversized and uneven, but she refused to take it off. She hadn't said much since the last conversation, as if her mind was retreating inward again. You all right? He asked. Her voice came slowly, like code untangling. You're nervous. He glanced at her. Yeah, I don't usually bring home guests that half the galaxy might want destroyed. Caliph looked out the viewport. Earth was a marble in the dark, vibrant, pulsing with chaotic energy. Your planet is loud. That's one way to put it, he muttered. You'll hate it first. Everyone does. She didn't smile. She didn't even blink. I sensed division, struggle, fear. Welcome to humanity, Ethan said. We're great at all three. The ship jolted. A proximity alert flashed red. Ethan stiffened. What the hell? A second signal appeared. Then a third. Then a full identification. Arch Valley I Scout vessel locked on. Caliph's hands clenched. They found me. Ethan spun to her. Ow. We were off-grid. They seeded me with trace nanodata, she said. A tracker. Quantum range. I didn't realize they'd activated it again. He cursed under his breath and pushed the ship hard toward the atmosphere. We're going in fast. Strap in. Caliph didn't move. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. Not telepathy, not magic. Something more mechanical. She found the signal inside her, flickering like a buried radio tower. And she pushed. The lights in the ship flickered. Ethan gritted his teeth. What the hell are you doing? Scrambling it. She whispered. Her skin began to glow, faint but real. If I overclock the signal echo, it might rupture the data trail. But it will hurt. You'll fry your system. I know. A moment passed. Then her body jolted like she'd been electrocuted. She screamed, not loud, but guttural like a dying circuit. Her knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she hit the ground. The alert on the screen flashed again. Tracker signal lost. Target undetected. ARX Scout vessel aborting pursuit. Ethan looked at her, heart pounding. Caliph. She was breathing, barely. Her skin flickered with white-hot pulses under the surface. Never again, she murmured. They don't get to find me again. He carried her to the cot, placed her down gently, and started a diagnostic scan. No damage to critical systems, but her neural pathways were unstable, like someone had kicked down a wall in her mind and left the door open. She stared at the ceiling. I hurt you. What? When I overloaded. Your ship, your systems, they're not made for someone like me. He sighed and sat beside her. Don't worry about the ship. It's old, but it's tough. You could have died. So could you. She turned her head slowly, eyes glowing faintly in the low light. Why do you keep risking yourself for me? He didn't have a good answer. Only a quiet one. Because someone should have done it a long time ago. Caliph looked away. I don't know how to be with someone. I was designed to serve data, not feelings. My creators stripped out anything they thought would distract me from function. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees. So they made you blind to your own heart. Yes. He nodded slowly. Maybe it's time someone helped you put it back together. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't cold. It breathed between them. Caliph sat up carefully. Earth, will it let me stay? I'll make sure it does, he said. I know people. Off-grid, sympathetic. We'll figure it out. She hesitated. And if they come again? Ethan looked her straight in the eye. Then we fight. Her lips parted slightly. Not a smile, but not far from one. Hours later, they broke through Earth's upper atmosphere. The Nevada desert sprawled below like a cracked canvas, stretching into infinity. Ethan guided the ship to a wide, scorched plateau and activated the camo field. The Wendigo shimmered, then faded into the rocks like a ghost. Kayla stepped out into real gravity for the first time in years. The sun hit her face like a slap, not painful, but overwhelming. Heat, light, sensation, all flooding her at once. She stumbled. Ethan caught her arm. "You okay?" She nodded slowly, eyes adjusting. "The light is warm." He chuckled. "That's the sun. It doesn't care where you're from. Just burns you anyway." They walked together across the rock plain to a disguised hatch hidden beneath a rusted satellite dish. Ethan punched in a code. The door opened with a low groan. Below was a bunker. Old, reinforced, powered by buried solar. Inside, a cot, water purifier, data terminal, and shelves lined with gear and books. The place smelled like oil and old coffee. Caleb stepped in cautiously. "This is home," Ethan said. "Not much, but it's mine." She stood in the center, eyes scanning everything. "You built all this?" "Mostly. Some of it was left from my unit. The rest I salvaged." She sat slowly on the edge of the cot. Her posture was straighter than before, like she was beginning to own her space, not shrink from it. "I don't know how to exist here." He sat across from her. "Then start small, 1 hour at a time." Caliph looked down at her hands, and for the first time in her life, she whispered, "I want to try." 3 days passed. In the bunker, silence was never really silent. The generator hummed softly underground. Wind brushed across the dunes above like whispers of a dying planet. Ethan had settled into a routine: water, food, signal check, rest. But Caliph didn't need sleep the way he did. She would lie awake at night, eyes open, watching the ceiling like it might tell her something she'd forgotten. Her mind worked differently. Not faster, just wider. That morning, she sat cross-legged on the floor, Ethan's datapad glowing in her hands. "This is your planet's history." He looked over from the stove. "Some of it. Most of it's propaganda, politics, or war." She scrolled. "You record your mistakes." He raised an eyebrow. "You don't." "No. My kind erases failure." Explained a lot. She studied an old photo of Earth's moon landing. Your people reach without knowing what's waiting. That's kind of the human condition. Caliph paused. "That's dangerous." Ethan smirked. "So is living." He poured a mug of bitter, rehydrated coffee, took a sip, and made a face. "Still tastes like regret." Suddenly, Caliph froze. The datapad screen flickered, then went dark. "Wait," she whispered. "That wasn't me." Ethan stood. "What happened?" Caliph placed the pad on the table. "There's a frequency near here. Not civilian. Encrypted." Ethan tapped into the terminal and ran a scan. A low ping echoed through the system. Then a string of data burst onto the screen. His blood went cold. "Military clearance code," he muttered. "But not mine. This is fresh. Someone just pinged our location." Caliph stood. "Ow. I've been off-grid for 5 years. Only thing that could connect is..." He stopped. Looked at her. "You." She blinked. "I destroyed the tracker." "Yeah, but what if it wasn't the only one? What if they baked something deeper into you? Something you can't even sense?" Caliph didn't move. "That would mean I was never truly free." Ethan clenched his jaw. "We have to move." He opened the gear locker and started throwing supplies into bags. Water, weapons, fake IDs. Caliph didn't stop him, but she moved slower, like something in her had broken again. He caught her arm. "Hey, we'll be okay. I put you in danger," she said softly. "I always do." Ethan shook his head. "No, they did. You didn't ask for any of this." Outside, the wind shifted. Then silence. That's when the power cut out. The generator died instantly. Lights blinked, flickered, and went black. Ethan pulled his pistol. EMP pulse. "They're here," Caliph whispered. "I don't want to run anymore." "Well, too bad," he muttered. "Because I do." They sprinted toward the back tunnel, a narrow exit that led to a surface ridge. As they emerged, a low rumble rolled across the dunes. A ship, black, silent, hovering. Not Arch Valley this time. Worse, a U.S. drone interceptor. Ethan froze. Shit. That's not them. That's us. Calith's voice was razor thin. They want to study me. He nodded. Or bury you. The drone descended, projecting a voice. Ethan Reyes. You are harboring a class 4 unregistered synthetic life form. Stand down and surrender the construct for decommissioning. Calith's fingers sparked with residual power. I'm not a construct. I know. Ethan whispered. But to them, you're a threat. She stepped forward. Calith. I won't hide. Ethan grabbed her shoulder. If they get their hands on you, they'll strip you down a code. She turned to him, her eyes burning bright silver now, not dim. Then let me show them what they try to destroy. The drone fired a warning shot. The ground exploded 3 meters to their right. Calith raised her hands. The next pulse never reached them. It bent mid-air, arcing around her like water over stone, and dissolved into static. The drone buzzed with confusion. Energy deflection. Ethan muttered. Holy shit. Calith stepped forward again. I won't run. Not from them. Not anymore. The drone fired again, this time at full charge. Calith absorbed it. Her entire body lit up like a supernova, glowing so bright Ethan had to shield his eyes. Then she unleashed it, not as a beam, but as a wave. A silent push of light and force that hit the drone like a planet. It dropped, crashed. Smoke hissed into the sand. Ethan ran to her. Calith, you okay? She was on one knee, panting hard. I didn't know I could do that. Ethan helped her stand. Neither did they. He looked back at the wreck. That signal was Earth military, which means your story just got a hell of a lot more complicated. Calith didn't reply. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. They'll come again, she said. I know. He took her hand, gently. She didn't pull away this time. We keep moving, he said. We find somewhere even the stars can't see. Calith gripped his hand tighter. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of what she was. And he wasn't afraid of what loving her might cost. If you've ever rooted for a love that wasn't supposed to exist, or a soul that fought to matter in a world that wanted it erased, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more coming. Stories like this. Stories that fight back. The smoke hadn't settled. The wreckage of the drone still hissed where it had fallen, its twisted frame embedded deep in the sand like a broken rib. The desert wind clawed at it uselessly, dragging sparks across the scorched earth, but nothing moved. It was dead. For now. Calith sat slumped against a dune, her legs folded awkwardly beneath her. Her chest rose and fell too slowly, like her body was struggling to keep up with what her mind had just done. Ethan paced a few feet away, gun still in hand, eyes scanning the horizon. Every few seconds, he looked over at her, not with fear, but something more complicated. Something raw. You okay? He finally asked. Calith didn't look up. I feel strange. You overloaded, burned your system, and probably shorted every signal tower in a 10-mile radius. I'd be shocked if you didn't feel strange. I didn't know I could do that, she whispered. Ethan crouched beside her. They didn't either. Which means they're not done. She turned to him, eyes dim again. What happens now? He thought about lying, about saying everything would be fine, that they could hide, that he had another bunker, another safe house, another miracle. But the truth sat heavy in his chest. They'll escalate, he said. If Earth's military knows what you are, they'll send more than a drone next time. And if Arx Valii picks up the same trail. Calith closed her eyes. Then no place is safe. He nodded. The silence stretched between them, hot and wide and unforgiving. Calith opened her eyes again, slowly. I didn't mean to destroy it. I just reacted. You protected us. But I used them, she said. The weapons they embedded in me. The systems I was supposed to never activate. That wasn't a weapon, Ethan said. That was survival. That was you choosing not to die. Calith stared out at the horizon. What if the next time? I can't control it. Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at the wreckage, then at her, then back at the dust trails in the distance, faint but growing. We can't stay here, he said. They'll send satellites, scanners, maybe even boots. Calith nodded. Then we run again. He helped her feet. She was trembling now. From fatigue or fear, he couldn't tell. Probably both. They returned to the bunker just long enough to grab essentials. Rations, a thermal blanket, Ethan's encrypted comms unit. Caliph paused at the entrance one last time. This place, it was quiet. I'm sorry, Ethan said, locking the hatch. I never wanted it to be your last home. They made their way across the desert in silence, navigating by memory and instinct. Ethan's contact, a hacker named Jules, lived in the remains of a decommissioned military observatory 2 hours away. If anyone could wipe Caliph's signal from the global grid, it was him. But the journey wasn't kind. By nightfall, Caliph had nearly collapsed twice. Her body burned inside, like something was trying to rewrite her from within. Ethan carried her when she couldn't walk anymore. She hated that. Hated the way her weight sagged in his arms. Hated how warm he felt. How alive, compared to her hollow circuits. Leave me, she rasped once. I'll slow you down. He just tightened his grip and kept moving. No one gets left behind, he muttered. Not again. By the time they reached Jules's outpost, a battered concrete dome half buried in sand, Ethan could barely see straight. He slammed his fist on the door panel. A camera whirred to life. A voice barked through the speaker. If this is another sales pitch for Galactic Crypto, I swear to God I'm. Jules. It's me. A pause. Then the door opened. The inside was lit by cracked LED panels, patched screens, and trailing wires. Jules was thin, bearded, and wore an old university hoodie. His eyes widened when he saw Caliph. Dude, that's not a girlfriend. No, Ethan said. She's something they want dead. Jules exhaled slowly. You always bring the fun ones. They laid Caliph on the makeshift med bench while Jules scanned her. He whistled. Her neural architecture's not just synthetic, it's quantum layered. She's built on code I've only seen in deep state labs. You sure she's not military? She's from Arts Valley I. Jules blinked. Okay, so she's a ghost. Can you wipe her from the EarthNet? Ethan asked. I mean completely. Burn the trace. Kill the tether. Jules scratched his beard. Maybe. But if someone hardwired a live quantum ping into her, it's not just about data. It's about existence. She may be sending out a signal every time she feels something. Caliph's voice came, soft and flat. Then I should stop feeling. Ethan stepped forward. Don't say that. Jules looked between them. You care about her. I trust her. Caliph closed her eyes. Even if it kills you. Ethan nodded. Especially then. Jules sighed. Well, I hope you trust my firewall too. Let's fry your ID. The process took hours. Caliph's body jolted several times as Jules patched into her internal systems. She never cried out. Not once. But Ethan never left her side. When it was done, Jules leaned back, exhausted. She's gone. Wiped from every traceable net. If anyone wants her now, they'll have to find her the old way. Caliph sat up slowly. Her hands were shaking. Thank you. Jules gave a weak grin. Don't thank me. Just don't explode in my dome. Ethan helped her off the table. She was still pale, still shaking, but something in her eyes had changed. Not fire, but focus. She looked at Ethan. We should go. Where? She stared at the desert beyond the door. Where no one knows what I am. Just who I choose to be. He smiled. Sounds like a plan. The desert, under moonlight, looked almost clean. They moved under the stars in silence, taking back roads and hidden paths, far from cities, signals, and satellites. Jules had given them a solar vehicle, half buried in dust but still functional, and they'd been driving for hours, with no plan except to keep moving. Caliph sat in the passenger seat, eyes scanning the horizon like she could see threats long before they came. Her skin had returned to its usual pale luminescence, but there was a faint tension in her jaw, the kind that doesn't fade with rest. Ethan glanced over. You good? I don't understand how humans live like this, she said, not turning. Constant uncertainty. Constant fear. He gave a dry laugh. We don't live like this. We just fake it well. She finally looked at him. You're faking. Every day. They made her pause. Then, I think I'm learning how. They drove in silence for a while longer, until the road narrowed into gravel, and the terrain shifted into jagged hills and dry grass. Ethan cut the engine and coasted into a shaded crevice between two rocky bluffs. We can rest here, he said, stepping out and stretching his legs. No drones. No pings. No lights. Just dust and sky. Caliph stepped out too, looking up at the stars. You still navigate by those. Sometimes. Depends if I trust the tech. She tilted her head. Do you trust me? He didn't answer immediately. He looked at her. Really looked, standing barefoot on the dirt, wrapped in a jacket too big for her, hair glowing faintly like strands of comet dust. Her expression was unreadable, but not cold. He nodded. Yeah, I do. Caliph lowered her eyes. I don't trust myself. Ethan leaned against the hood of the vehicle. You don't have to yet. Just don't give up on trying. They sat beside each other in the dark. No lights, no noise, just the wind tracing lines through sand and stone. After a while, Ethan opened a ration pack and offered it to her. She accepted it, ate in small, methodical bites, then looked at him, eyes searching. You're not afraid of what I might become. I'm afraid of what the world will do if it never gives you a chance. She studied him. That's not logic. That's faith. Yeah, he said. It is. Caliph shifted slightly closer. Faith is inefficient, illogical. It breaks systems. Maybe, Ethan said, but it's the only thing I've got left. She didn't reply right away. Then, I want to believe you. I just don't know how. That's all right, he said. We'll build that too. She stared at him a little longer than before. Then she said the thing she hadn't let herself say since really and I don't want to be alone again. He didn't touch her. He didn't have to. I'm not going anywhere, Ethan said quietly. Not unless you tell me to. And still, he didn't reach for her. He gave her space, the choice to close the distance or not. Caliph did. She leaned her head gently on his shoulder. Not like a lover. Not yet. But like someone discovering what safety feels like for the first time. Not an algorithm. Not a condition. A presence. They stay that way for a long time. No one spoke. No one had to. Later, inside the tent they rigged against the rocks, Caliph sat near the emergency heater, watching the coils glow orange. Her expression was calm, but not distant. She turned to him. Your body. It degrades with time. Yeah, Ethan said. That's one way to put it. Your skin changes. Your organs fail. Your cells forget how to repair themselves. He chuckled. Thanks for the pep talk. I wasn't mocking you, she said. I was wondering how you endure knowing that. He thought about it. Because it makes the moments worth something. You only get so many. She absorbed that in silence. Then, I don't degrade. Not naturally. My systems will persist long after your heart stops. Ethan looked at her. You scared of that? She hesitated. Yes, because I've only just started to feel something I don't have words for. And I know it will end before I'm ready. He moved closer. Not too close. Just enough to meet her eyes. Then let's not waste it. Caliph's face softened. I'm not designed for love. Then we'll build that too. He said it without flinching. No poetry. No grandeur. Just truth. She placed her hand over his, fingertips tracing the ridges of his knuckles like reading a code she couldn't understand yet, but wanted to. Then she said it. The word neither of them had spoken out loud. Stay. And this time, Ethan leaned in. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just a closeness. His forehead gently touching hers, breath shared, hearts steady. A moment, not programmed, not predicted, but chosen. The explosion came just before dawn. It ripped across the hills like a thunderclap from hell. A flash of white fire and shockwave that shattered silence and certainty. Ethan was thrown across the camp. Caliph was already on her feet before the dust even cleared. A shadow descended through the smoke. Not drone, not human. HFY, but not scouts, not now. This was an eradicator. A hunter-class vessel built for precision extraction and destruction. Silent, hovering, blacker than the night it cut through. Ethan scrambled for his rifle. Caliph placed a hand on his chest. That won't stop them. We can't run. No, she said. We can't. The eradicator hovered 20 meters above them. A voice echoed, low, metallic, and impossibly calm. Subject K, 47. Your continued independence violates Protocol 17. Surrender for integration or face absolute nullification. Kayla stepped forward, her face like carved stone. I am no longer K, 47. You are property of HFY. No, she said. I am mine. The ship responded by charging its main cannon. Ethan moved, fast, tackling Caliph behind a rock outcrop, just as the blast struck. Heat scorched the air. Stone turned to vapor. The ground collapsed beneath them, throwing both into the ravine below. They hit hard. Dust filled their mouths and lungs. Ethan groaned, shoulder twisted, pain shooting down his arm. Caliph pulled him behind a larger boulder as plasma blasts rained down from above. He coughed. "Any other tricks up your sleeve?" She looked at him. Her pupils were flickering, her skin pulsing with white light. "Not rage, not power. Grief. If I activate my full output," she said quietly, "I can overload the Eradicator systems." "Shut it down." "For how long?" "Long enough." "Then let's do it." She shook her head. "It will kill me." Ethan froze. "There's another way." "There's not," she said. "They embedded a failsafe in my core. If I push too far, it ignites. That's what makes me controllable." He grabbed her arm. "We'll disable it." "Hack it." "You're not." "I can feel it," she interrupted, "like a needle pressing against my center." He stared at her, throat tight. "You don't get to die like this. I was never meant to live." "You do now." For the first time, her voice cracked. "If I don't stop them, they'll follow you, track you, hurt you. I won't let them." He held her face in both hands. "You're not a weapon. You're not a martyr. You're Caliph." She smiled. Soft, tragic, beautiful. That's the first name anyone gave me that wasn't written on a form. She stood, eyes locked on the machine above. "I'm sorry," she said. And then she ran, up the incline, toward the surface, light flaring from her skin with every step. "Caliph." But she didn't look back. The Eradicator scanned her, began to charge. She opened her arms. Ethan climbed after her, pain screaming in every limb. "Stop." The first blast hit her, and dispersed just like before. But this time she didn't deflect it. She absorbed it, all of it. Her body convulsed as the energy tore through her, tearing synthetic nerves, shattering systems. Her eyes burned white. Her veins lit up. She took it in until the ship dimmed, confused. Then she gave it back. Not as light, as a scream. It wasn't sound. It was code, a pulse of raw memory, fury, grief and choice, shot directly into the ship's neural core. A digital howl that shattered its architecture from the inside. The Eradicator twitched, then dropped like a dying god. Ethan reached her just in time to catch her as she fell. Her body was light, too light, dim now, hair falling in white strands across his arms. "No, no, 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 Caliph." She looked up at him, barely conscious. "Did it work?" He nodded, eyes wet. "You stopped it." She blinked. "I was afraid. I wouldn't get to choose anything." "You chose everything," he whispered. "I want more time." "You'll have it," he said, gripping her tighter. "You hear me? You're not done." She smiled again, weaker this time. "If I stop working, don't bury me. Just leave me under the stars." "Caliph." But her eyes fluttered shut, and everything stilled. For a second, Ethan couldn't breathe. He pressed his head to her chest. There was silence. Then, a pulse. Faint, but real. He lifted her, heart racing. "Hold on. I'm not losing you now." Caliph slept for 2 days. Not a shutdown. Not a reboot. Sleep. Her systems flickered low, like a candle held between two fingers, the flame refusing to die, but too weak to burn. Ethan never left her side. He set up camp in the ravine where she collapsed, using the wreckage of the Eradicator for cover. Whatever beacon it had been sending was gone now. He dismantled the power core himself, then buried it in sand and silence. By the third morning, she stirred. It was subtle. Her fingers twitched. Her lips parted. She whispered his name, not as a command or alert, but as something more fragile. "Ethan." He dropped the tin cup in his hand and rushed to her. "I'm here," he said, falling to his knees. "I'm here, Caliph. You're okay." She blinked, slowly. Her eyes were duller now, not silver, but cloudy. Her glow was gone. Her skin had lost its faint shimmer. Her hands felt heavier than she remembered. "I can't feel everything." He nodded. "Your overcharged fried parts of your neural matrix. Jules warned that might happen. I thought I would be gone. You almost were." Her voice broke. "I didn't want that." Ethan took her hand. "You stayed. That's what matters." Caliph looked at him. Truly looked. No calculation, no scan. Just him. And for the first time, she felt something like gravity inside herself. Not the force that holds a body to the ground, but the one that pulls you towards someone even when you're falling apart. "I don't know how to rebuild," she said. "Then we do it slow," he said. "Together." She rested her head against his chest. The rhythm of his heartbeat steadied her. Chaotic, mortal, unpredictable, but real. A reminder that time was always limited, and that made it precious. Ethan set up a temporary shelter in a cave near the ravine. It wasn't much, just canvas and stone, some wiring, and a solar battery salvaged from the Eradicator. But it was quiet, hidden, safe for now. Caliph moved slowly those first few days. Her balance was off. Her reflexes didn't always sync, but she was learning something new. What meant to choose slowness? No longer optimized. No longer required to react at machine speed. She learned the pace of touch, of gaze, of words spoken not for function, but for comfort. They'd sit near the cave mouth at sunset, wrapped in a shared thermal blanket, watching the sun melt behind jagged cliffs. Ethan talked. Caliph listened. Sometimes she asked questions about music, about food, about why humans told stories with sad endings. And sometimes she told her own. I used to simulate futures, she said one evening. Millions at once. Endless variations. I thought I was helping, but they said it was inconclusive. Too emotional. Too soft. Ethan glanced over. What did you see? I saw a version of me that ran, she said. A version that never spoke to you. One that survived longer. But she never smiled. He said nothing. Just reached for her hand and held it gently. In that quiet, something new settled between them. Not adrenaline, not necessity, not escape. Just presence. Caliph began to rebuild. Not in code, but in connection. She started journaling on Ethan's datapad. Not for utility, for reflection. She drew symbols from her old world, translated feelings she didn't have names for. Ethan couldn't read any of it, but he didn't need to. He watched her come alive in pieces. She helped him reinforce the cave, create a filtration system from drone parts, even retrofit the solar cell into a power grid for lights and basic heat. She didn't recover all her functions. Some were gone forever, but she didn't seem to mourn them. I don't need to see every future anymore, she said one night. Just this one. He kissed her for the first time then. Not rushed, not passionate, just true. A slow merging of breath and intention. Like the first page of a story neither of them had read before, but both were ready to write. They began to dream. Not big, not loud, just real. A garden maybe, hidden in the canyon. A satellite hacked to bounce false signals away. A future that didn't need to be perfect, just theirs. One morning, while Caliph was preparing a thermal brew, Ethan returned from a scouting run with something in his hand. A seed pack. He dropped in her lap. Figured we could try planting something real. She looked at it, then up at him. Why? Because for the first time in my damn life, he said, I want to stay somewhere. She smiled. It was smaller now. Slower. But it was hers. They weren't safe. They weren't hidden forever. But for that day, they were alive. And that was enough. Caliph stood barefoot at the edge of the cliff. Morning sun casting soft gold across her pale skin. The wind carried desert dust across the horizon, dancing in gentle spirals. She raised her hand, palm open, feeling the warmth, not as a sensor, but as something she could name now. Comfort. Below, Ethan worked the soil with a shovel he'd rigged from drone scrap. They'd carved out a crude garden bed among the rocks. It wasn't fertile ground, but it was theirs. Caliph turned toward him. You're doing it wrong. He didn't look up. Thanks. I needed the critique from someone who's never planted a damn thing. You're overpacking the soil, she said, walking down the slope to him. The seeds won't breathe. He stood, brushing dust from his hands. You've been watching tutorials, haven't you? I've been learning, she said. Humans learn by failing. I'm adjusting to that. He smiled, shaking his head. Now you're just mocking me in scientific terms. She reached out and gently corrected the soil line with her fingers. Ethan watched her. Does it feel strange? Slower than how you used to process things? She didn't answer immediately. Then, yes, but also feels real. Before, everything was filtered through algorithms. Probability, risk, priority. Now it's touch, pressure, texture, delay. It's imperfect, but that's where I find clarity. He crouched beside her. Funny. Humans spend their lives trying to optimize, automate, predict. You came from a world that was all that, and now you're here planting seeds in sand. Caliph turned her head. Would you have still brought me with you, knowing what I'd become? I didn't bring you, Ethan said. You chose to come. She hesitated. But if you had known I'd lose most of what made me useful. I didn't want you for your systems. Her eyes met his. Then what did you want? He didn't flinch. Someone who'd stay. The words hit deeper than she expected. In every world before him, Caliph had been viewed as a tool. A failed project. A malfunction. Even her name had been a serial code, not an identity. Ethan had never once asked her to perform. He just waited, stayed, listened. That was love, she realized. Not in the sparks or the surge of power, but in stillness, in presence, in witnessing someone without needing to change them. She looked back at the garden. Nothing may grow here. Doesn't matter, Ethan said. We'll try again. Caliph looked at the sky. A satellite blinked faintly far above. They're still searching, she said. Maybe not today, but eventually, they'll find the signal we can't block. I know. She turned to him. Are you afraid? Yeah, but you don't run. He stepped closer, placing a hand over hers. We don't run anymore. The sun warmed their skin. It didn't care who they were, what systems they'd escaped, what kind of blood ran through their veins, red or synthesized or starlight-born. All it did was shine. Caliph sat beside him in the dust. Ethan, what are we now? He took a breath. Two people. A little broken. A little alive. Trying. She nodded slowly. That's enough. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Not for comfort. For choice. Moments later, she whispered. Sometimes I wonder if all the rejection was a path. Not punishment. He looked down at her. How do you mean? I was thrown away because I felt too much. But maybe that feeling was never the error. Maybe it was the purpose. Ethan kissed the side of her head gently. Then they failed to see what they created. They created a heart, she said. They just didn't expect it to choose someone like you. Ethan smiled. They didn't expect someone like you to survive. I didn't, she said. Not until you. They sat like that until the sun passed overhead and shadows stretched. Caliph didn't talk much for the rest of the day. But later, under the stars, she pulled out her journal and wrote one phrase Ethan would find days later. I was never meant to be a person, but he treated me like one. And now, I refuse to be anything less. 3 years later, the desert looked different. Not because of rain, or terraforming, or some technological miracle, but because Ethan and Caliph refused to let it stay dead. The garden had grown, slowly, stubbornly, defiantly. Rows of drought-resistant crops found root between broken rocks and burned ship parts, nourished by salvage tech and care. The soil still cracked, but life had carved out a place for itself, just like they had. Every morning, Ethan walked between the rows, wearing a wide-brimmed hat to shield his aging face. The lines around his eyes had deepened. His left shoulder ached when the cold crept in, but his steps were steady. He no longer walked like a man running from ghosts. He walked like someone who'd finally come home. Caliph managed the solar grid. Her movements were slower now, deliberate. She still carried the internal damage from the overload years ago. Parts of her system had never rebooted. She could no longer sense potential timelines or access off-world archives. But in exchange, she had something far more precious. Live time. Once a week, they sent a single encrypted broadcast. No signature. No request for help. Just quiet knowledge released into the dark. How to harvest solar heat into energy. How to hide from facial scans. How to grow food in poison ground. A signal for anyone still trying to survive. They never got a reply. They sent it anyway. On the ridge where the drone had once fallen, Ethan installed an angled mirror. At noon each day, it caught the sun and cast a beam into the cave below, illuminating the wall Caliph painted little by little, a mural of layered symbols, half human, half alien. Memories too stubborn to delete. Stories too strange for language, but still hers. Every evening, she added a few new shapes, loops, lines, marks like constellations. 2 small arcs beneath a curved line. Ethan watched her paint that symbol again and again without asking, until finally, curiosity won out. What's that supposed to be, he asked. She didn't hesitate. A family. He raised an eyebrow. Huh, I thought family looked different. It did, she said, until I met you. He went quiet then. In 3 years, she had never called him mine. She never said, I love you, in human phrasing. She didn't need to. He felt it when she wrapped the blanket around him at night. when she handed him the first bite of anything they grew, when she stayed awake just to hear him breathe. And that was enough. One day, Caliph felt something in the wind. Not danger, but change. The satellites had gone silent. The frequency she once feared was no longer tracking. Somewhere out there, her creators had abandoned the search. Maybe Ark's Valley Eye collapsed. Maybe it rebranded and moved on. Or maybe the world simply forgot her. For the first time, she let herself ask the question out loud. What if we stopped hiding? That night, she turned to Ethan and said, I want to build a real house. With walls. With windows. He didn't laugh. He just nodded. Then we start tomorrow. And they did. They built the walls from wreckage and stone. The windows from recycled ship visors. The door was made of reinforced steel, heavy but smooth on the hinge. The house wasn't beautiful by conventional standards, but every inch was earned. When it was done, Caliph carved a single letter above the doorway. K. It's the first letter that ever belonged to me, she said. Ethan touched the frame below it. And the last one the universe will forget. In the spring of their 4th year, Caliph began recording their story. Not as a log, not as a report, but as living memory. She wrote everything she remembered. The rejections, the escape, the moment her body nearly failed under the weight of a warship, and the man who didn't leave. She didn't know if anyone would ever read it, but she wanted it in the world anyway. A whisper from someone who was never supposed to exist, finally declaring, I did. And one morning, with the sky clear like clean paper, Ethan woke up next to her and realized something painfully simple. He had everything he needed. No promises, no guarantees, scars but no regrets, because she chose to stay. And so did he. If this story moved something in you, leave a comment below. Tell us what you felt, what you saw in it, or what stayed with you. And if you want more stories like this, filled with emotion, risk, and something real, don't forget to subscribe. There's a lot more coming.